Stay tuned till the end to find out how you can win one. So another part of the devices I explored at IFA was the custom keyboards, and there was really a lot to see, ranging from custom anime themed keyboards to even fully custom designs. One of them being the wooden keyboard from Akko, the MU01. I tried it on the spot, and while it was really nice, it was a bit too small for me, since that was actually a 65% keyboard design, where my G915, which is my daily driver, is 100%, and you can see the difference. But now there is the 75% version, which just seemed to make more natural hand placement for me. Meet the Akko MU02 Mountain Seclusion Edition. With this keyboard in the box you get a user manual, a USB-C cable, a USB wireless dongle, as well as a puller for keycaps and one for switches, and also some spare rosewood key switches for replacement. So this keyboard is truly a piece of art, and Akko is really good at making these custom designs. The whole outer frame is wooden, like really it's made out of real walnut, and the weight for this keyboard is just over 1 kilogram. And of course, to make this seamless design so smooth, some compromises had to be made. Since on the wooden casing you only have glued rubber supports and an opening for USB-C ports, so no switch or anything more around the edges, just a clean design. And the wood is just the main element of the chassis, because on the top there is also a metal faceplate, which has a nice shine beige tone. I actually saw an early version of this keyboard at IFA before launch, and back then it had a golden faceplate. So maybe there was a change in design, but there is also the MU02 Autumn version, which still uses the same golden faceplate. So maybe it was some prototype. And now moving on to the main thing, the keys themselves. There is a lot to look at, and careful not to get distracted while typing, as with this level of customization, you need to already be familiar with your key layout, because keys like Tab, Caps Lock, Shift and Enter won't be labeled accordingly, as there is a lot of miniature fine art on the bigger keys. There are lots of printed on painted sceneries to see, and even a poem in Chinese on each of the keycaps. And while the keycaps are printed on a light color, Akko promises high resistance against wear and tear because of its PBT dye sub process, which is basically a fancy name for the whole painting process. And I have to say, the keycaps really do feel premium, as almost as they would be made out of porcelain. The specific edition has very round keys and no sharp edges here, and the side buttons do look a bit like chocolate assorti. But while the keycaps look amazing, they are also user replaceable. Under the keycaps you will find Akko's own switches, and in this model they are either pink rosewood switch or V3 Piano Pro, with mine having the first one. And these keys do give a feeling close to ambient rain sounds. Here is a sample of how they sound when typing. But the cool thing with these custom keyboards is that you can actually opt for a completely different set of switches, if the stock ones aren't to your liking. You can even order a 16 switch sample kit online, to test out any of them before you make a full keyboard order. But removing the keycaps or switches just to swap them will not be the only reason. As I mentioned the keyboard's seamless design, here are the compromises. As you may have noticed, there is no power switch, but instead you have to remove the caps lock key to uncover the manual mode switch, where by default it is in wired only Windows mode, and it starts up once you plug in a USB-C cable. But there are other connection methods possible. You can make it fully wireless and enable the built-in 4000 mAh battery with the said switch. And by doing this, you can also use it with provided 2.4 GHz USB dongle, or use Bluetooth 5.0 connection with option to switch between up to 3 paired devices. And while it may be a little inconvenient, you will probably have to do it once and use it to your preference by switching the built-in battery to always on mode. And while it does support sleep mode, you won't be able to turn it off completely without removing the key again. For both wired mode and wireless USB, you have a 1000 Hz polling rate, but when using it with Bluetooth, it will limit you to 125 Hz. So being a 75% keyboard, button-wise it is also really minimalistic, nothing extra, just a volume knob. And because of this minimalistic design, a lot of functions are accessed via the function key shortcuts, and many different other keys. Like pressing the volume knob switches between adjusting the RGB backlight brightness and volume level. And yes, this keyboard also has south-facing RGB backlight, which means that it shines downward from each key. And because the keycaps are not transparent, the backlight will not illuminate your keys. So this is something to consider if you want to work in the dark. Instead, it will be as an ambient light around the keys for different effects. And since there are no extra keys, there aren't any dedicated system LEDs as well. Instead, they use the existing RGB backlight under the keys and mix up your LED party with status information as well. For example, a toggled caps lock will illuminate underneath, as well as mode device toggle keys, and even the battery indicator hides under the spacebar LED. So this might make things confusing depending on the chosen backlight color. More customizability can be achieved with the Akko Cloud Driver software, where you can define the custom keybinds and shortcuts and save them into separate profiles, as well as adjust RGB lighting effects with different animations, and even update firmware and more. And I have to say, while this makes things more customizable, I had a pretty hard time using the software, as some things took time to find and understand, which made it a bit more difficult to use. And this is really not the usual software you may be used to with big brand manufacturers out there. This is really the bare minimum in terms of UI design usability, so this is something Akko should work on, but it is clear that it is not their primary focus. So what are my final thoughts after using it for a while? Well, previously I have driven my Logitech G915 clicky slim profile keyboard for many years already, and I really got used to the low profile layout and the way my finger lands on the key. So the first experience with the MU02 was like, okay, I'm going to use it for a while, and the switches sound nice, it looks nice, but for productivity I'm going to stick with my Logitech again, since the keys on the MU02 landed quite heavy on the press, and the full pressed feeling was not one of my favorites. That's why I said it felt a bit like porcelain. But ever since my G915 went empty on battery, which also does not fast charge, I started going with the MU02 much more again. And I learned that just like with any other keyboards and switch types, I cannot smash these keys and expect them to get the same type of response, since different switches have different points of trigger and actuation, and with this one I had to be much more gentle to make it work out. But yes, that meant adjusting my typing habits, which may also not always be a good idea. And another thing is that I don't feel comfortable with the slight upwards raise, since I like my keyboard angle to be flat or almost negative, and this one is not adjustable. But even despite that, when I tried going back to my G915 now, the key presses suddenly felt wonky and cheap, contrary to this sturdy Akko keyboard that's built like a tank, like a gentle tank. And I think with these switches, this keyboard is meant for more of an enjoyment rather than gaming, for example, as this model probably won't cut it. And Akko has better offerings for this type of use case as well, like something like the HE magnetic switches, which by the way seem to be one of my favorites at IFA after testing many combinations, and these were installed on the Year of Dragon Edition keyboard, which really one of my favorites. So I can surely say that build, design and tech-wise, this keyboard is worth it and a total enjoyment. The wooden casing is exquisite and it feels really well built. And the keyboard is something very personal, and I'm really digging this specialized approach. With this 75% streamlined design, I was also missing on some extras like dedicated media buttons or even a proper power switch, since I will probably not be memorizing all the shortcuts anytime soon or removing my caps lock keycap that much. But this is a whole different world, and there will be some takeaways here and there, as well as the fact that it might take some time to find your own perfect keyboard, or modify it to your liking, or even maybe build your own custom one. And if you enjoy my content, don't forget to subscribe, as I will be giving away a brand new keyboard to one of my lucky subscribers within Europe. To enter, just write a comment below what you like about this keyboard. So, see you in the next video.